is teach people how to make 100K in 90 days using my power program. And I wanted to talk to you guys today. Hopefully, you can hear me about knowing what tax bracket you're in and how to maximize your deductions. Because, of course, by all means, who wants to overpay the IRS? Like, who does that? Who wants to do that? So, that's what we'll be talking about tonight. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I'm showing I'm live. And if you can hear me, you hop on the live. If you can just drop the number one to let me know that you can hear me on this live. See someone tuning in, I won't be able to see the comments. So, like I said, if you can hear me, just drop the number one. All right, so let's get started. So, question: if you're working hard for your money, why let the IRS keep more of it than you legally have to? So, like I stated earlier, a lot of people don't know taxes aren't free money. If you typically get a tax return, it's based on the amount of income you made, based on your household size, and that determines if you get a tax return. People don't know, like, you really don't want to get a tax return because if you get a tax return, that means you're making below your means that you need to succeed in life and throughout the year. But if you do make great money, you don't want to give all the money you made to the IRS. So, what can we do? What does that actually look like? So, a little bit about myself. Like I was saying, I'm the owner of Nala Solutions. I started my business, I want to say back in 2017. It was basically just credit restoration. Then, as time progressed, I included or added I added credit repair. I added taxes, LLC setup, life insurance, a lot of things that's in the financial industry because I wanted my community to know how to be able to be, financially stable. I used to I used to work in banking and I used to see a lot of people come in and they had lots of money and they were able to save and they had great credit. And I wanted to know what is it that they're doing that my family and friends aren't doing to be able to be in this position. So that's kind of how my business came about. Um, I recently got a transplant March 24th. Thank you, God. And even though I was still running my business, I'm 100% entrepreneur. It would take strength and energy to get to the point where I am now. So today, and also in the future, I want to continue to keep going live every single Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to be able to drop these tools and nuggets to my community. So let's look at our mindset and belief system. So, first of all, taxes aren't a punishment if you make a lot of money. Taxes is basically a strategy. So, you want to know how can I strategize? How can I strategize to make more money for myself, for my household? How do I leave a legacy? Because those who start making more money, you pay more in taxes. If you self-employed, you say even if you just have an LLC and you have an EIN number, you're paying 15.3% in taxes. So if you make $100,000, you times that by 15.3%, 15,300 that is going towards taxes. Off top, you're losing that amount of money. So we need to know what's the strategy, what's the tax financial strategy in order to keep money throughout our household. Many of us think taxes is something we just have to accept and move forward. We can't influence it. All tax software systems are pretty much the same. You put in the right numbers, you're going to get the same tax return no matter who does your taxes. I don't care what nobody say. Oh, I'm the GOAT. I could do this. I can get you more back, etc. But honestly speaking, Taxes is taxes. Software is software. And you want to go to somebody legit, because if not, you'll wind up paying a price or not even getting a return and still owing money. I had a client who didn't come to me, and he ended up messaging me and saying, I owe the IRS $5,000, but I never even received that tax return. I had to explain to him that granted you didn't receive the return, but because whoever prepared your taxes put a illegal credit on your tax return, you won't get that money. You'll get penalized for basically doing a fraudulent return, and you have to pay interest on that. So a lot of people don't understand that. So they go to people thinking that they're going to get the juice. So I'm going to get the 20,000 return, I'm going to get the $30,000 return. But when they don't get that money because the person put a fuel credit on their tax return, or that person put a household employee credit, then they're wondering, why didn't I get the money and why do I still owe the IRS? Because you committed fraud. You did a fraudulent tax return. So because you did a fraudulent tax return, you won't get that money. So we need to shift our mindset out of, frustration and fear of not getting things back. Everybody doesn't deserve a tax return. We've been so brainwashed to think, especially as a community, that everybody gets a tax return. If you don't get a tax return, somebody did your taxes wrong. And that is absolutely the farthest from the truth. You may have increased your income, and because you've increased your income, you don't receive the same amount of money back in taxes. Or your children, they got older. That's another reason you may not receive it. You may not have any credits. You may not have any deductions. So a lot of things, like one of the myths is people think, oh, well, I made a lot of money this year. How come I got more? I didn't get more in taxes. It's the complete opposite. The more you make, the less you get back in taxes, unless you have these tax credits, unless you have these tax deductions. So even if you have kids, that doesn't mean you're going to get a tax refund, because if you're over a certain income threshold, you're taxed at a different tax rate. So those are things that people need to take into consideration. So you need to be able to structure your taxes correctly in order to make sure you get the best out of the tax situation. You don't need to go to somebody that's just punching in numbers. You need to go to somebody who has a tax strategy that can make sure that you get a refund based on the correct information, or show you what you need to do to structure your income correct. Let me see. So 5 steps to know your tax bracket and how your deductions work. So first of all, explain that this system changes every year. The standard deduction amount changes every year. The tax rate can change every year, etc. So you need to know for the year that we're in. So like, for instance, this is the year 2025. So you do taxes based off your 2024 income. So you need to know and look at the IRS website to see what tax bracket you are in and how much you'll get based on that tax bracket. Let's look at this right here. Hopefully you'll be able to see my screen. 1 second. Share screen. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Let me see if you guys are able to see it. Okay, you can't. All right, so if you made between $0 and $11,600, you're paid 10% in taxes off of everything that you make. Okay, and this is if you're single. You make between 11,601 and 47,000, you pay 12% in taxes. For those who say, oh, well, I make 6 figures, off that $100,000+, if you make between 100,000, 526, and 191, you're in a 24% tax bracket. So the more you make, the more you pay in taxes. And you can look on the IRS website and get this information off of the website at any point in time. If you're married, you have a little bit more cushion as far as what tax bracket you're in. So if you're married and say you make $100,000, you pay 22% instead of that 24% if you're single. You see the difference? So a lot of people don't want to file married filing jointly, but you actually should in some cases because it not only helps you with the standard deduction, but it helps you with what tax bracket it puts you in. So your filing status determines what your tax bracket could be. If you had a household, you can be in the 22% tax bracket, just like married filing jointly if you file head of household. Married filing separately, as you see, that tax bracket is actually more. It's kind of similar to single. So you make 100,000, you're paying 24% in taxes. 100,000, 24% in taxes. So you get a lower tax bracket, or you pay less of a percentage if you do married filing jointly or head of household. So that all determines, what tax bracket you will be placed in. I'm gonna stop sharing that screen. Let me see here. All right, so that determines your tax bracket and how much you pay. Hey, Lafanya, how you doing? Let's see here. So now you need to know the difference between credits and deductions. I should have continued to share my screen. So what that difference is per se, share that screen one more time from the IRS website. And always get your sources from a reputable site. Always try to get it from the IRS website before you just go by what somebody else says or anything like that. So, individual credits and deductions. So, deductions help decrease your income. So, like the standard deduction, that helps decrease your income. So, if you file single or married, your standard deduction, which comes from the total amount of money you make for the year, would be 14,600, same as married filing separately. So let's use an example. Say you made 60,000 for the year and you're single. Since you're single or you file separately from your spouse, you automatically deduct that 14,600. So now you're being taxed on $45,400. So based on your filing status determines how much money comes off your total income that you made. Or if you filed head of household and you made that same 60,000, you would take away that 21,900. You're getting taxed on 38,000 instead of 45,000. So that's why a lot of people are like, oh, I'm head of household. First of all, you have to have a dependent to be the head of household, because what are you the head of household of? And you have to meet other certain qualifications as well for head of household. So a lot of people, when they want to file married filing separately because they don't want to be attached to their spouse, they are losing money because it's as if they're filing single and they're not realizing they're getting a lower standard deduction. Some deductible expenses you can write off. It helps decrease your AGI as well. If you use your car for business use of the car, you could depreciate it. Any alimony payments, that also depends on the year that you got married. So it's different laws for that. If you put money into an IRA, any type of savings account, donations to charity, etc. Those are some deductions, and you can also itemize as well. Those things help decrease your tax liability. What's a credit? Some refundable credits that help you determine how, you get a credit, which is kind of like cash on your tax return, earned income tax credit. You have to meet the qualifications for that. And it's a chart based on your income of how much you get for earned income tax credit. But what people fail to realize, you have to be in a certain tax bracket in order to get this earned income tax credit. And most people who get this credit are low income. So that's why I say to people, when you're getting a tax refund, it's because most likely you didn't make a lot of money and your household size is big. Other credits, child and dependent care credit, which is typically not dollar for dollar, but that's another credit that you can get. Education credit. If you went to school, you can get the lifetime learning credit or the American Opportunity Credit. So those are some credits that help you receive a tax refund, child tax credit, etc. So those help you receive a refund, but it's also based on how much money you make. So for 2024 tax season, I should say, you don't have any dependents and you made between 18,591, 25,511, you get a earned income credit of $632. But it's not much, but that depends, like I said, on how much you made and how much you also paid in taxes. Or if you made investment income of 11,600 or less, you qualify for this as well. If you invested and you made investment income more than this, you won't get this credit. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. You have one child, the max you can get was $4,213 for that child. But if your income exceeds or is close to this 56,000, you're not getting that whole 4,200. And people don't realize that. They say, "Oh, well, why did my friend get 4,200 for her child but only got 2,000?" Because you probably made 55,000 for the year. So these tables each year are very important. And then, of course, you get this income plus whatever you paid in taxes, which is in box number 2. Those numbers determine your tax refund. And as you can see, every single year, these numbers change. Last year, it was only 600 if you didn't have kids, and you were close to this bottom number. So those are the things people have to take in consideration on what determines how you receive a tax refund. So you have to know the difference between what is a deduction, like we talked about, that helps reduce your taxable income, like a standard deduction, and what is a tax credit, like earned income tax credit, child tax credit, child care credit, education credit. And those credits actually can trigger an audit. Those credits can actually trigger an audit. Yes, all is well. Hopefully everything's well with you too. Let me see here. I had to delete some comments. Somebody on there begging. That's kind of weird. Okay. On the live though. All right. Let's see here. Identify common deductions and credits that you may be missing. So, like if you work from home, you could do the home office deduction. So you could write off, how much, So this is my office basically. In order to get that credit, I need to know how much the total square footage is in my house, and then also subtract how much of this I use for business. You need those numbers in order to get that credit. You could do the simple method or you could do the long method. So a lot of people don't know if they are self-employed, they can get that credit. Student loan interest. If you have your 1099-T or your 1099-E, you can write off your student loan interest. Medical expenses. Medical expenses can be written off if the medical expenses is over. Let me see, how much does the medical expenses have to be over? I want to say 7.5%. Let me double check. Hold on. I want to say 7.5, but I don't want to give the incorrect information. Yep, 7.5. So the medical and dental expenses have to exceed 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. So for instance, if your income is say $50,000, 7.5% of that would be $3,750. So if you have $6,000 in medical expenses, it would be 6,000 minus that 7.5%. So you can write off the 2,250 that's left. So a lot of people aren't aware of that, and that will be itemized on your Schedule A tax return. Charitable donations, any charity, that goes on your Schedule A as well, and retirement. So if you want to, like I said, strategize and pay less in taxes, you should donate to charity or open a personal 401k account for yourself or IRA account. So that way it decreases your AGI, which decreases your tax liability. So that way you're paying less in taxes. I don't know why this slide is blank. Okay. Number four, you want to keep good records. So if you want to write off that house, you want to write off and depreciate that car, you want to write off that office space, you have to keep a paper trail of everything. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're not doing your own bookkeeping, hire a bookkeeping or use one of those apps like Wave or QuickBooks to do it yourself, because you can't write off what you cannot prove. So use the apps or make a folder or contact myself. My company does bookkeeping as well. So that way you'll have proof if you were to ever get audited, you have proof on why you were able to get these deductions. You want to strategize all year round, not just in April. So if you're looking and they're not taking enough taxes out of your W-2 income, make sure you update your W-4 with your employer so that way you pay your taxes throughout the year. Make those donations, invest, do all of those things before the end of the year so you're paying less in taxes. And we're almost to June. Do that mid-year review. Make sure you're not leaving any money on the table. Make sure you're getting all the deductions and write-offs that you possibly can. So now that you know how this works, what are you going to do differently to make sure that the system works for you? Don't, what they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. And the tax game really is built for people who are entrepreneurs. So it's built for you. This group is for entrepreneurs. So now that you know, I can write off my mortgage, I can write off a portion of my rent, I can write off lights, gas, phone, internet, anything that you need to run your business is a tax write off. But you have to keep a paper trail. So, what are you going to do to keep that paper trail so that way you can write these items off and you won't, get audited by, well, I'm not gonna say won't get audited. If in fact you were to get audited by the IRS, you have that paper trail. But let's stop giving away free money to the IRS. The government has enough money. Make sure you're doing everything that you can do so that way your business runs smoothly and you're paying less in taxes. A lot of people don't really understand, like I said, how tax brackets work. The more you make, the more your tax bracket increases, the more you pay on taxes. You're going to pay more than somebody who makes minimum wage. You may even make more money and get the EIC credit, but you're not eligible for it because you're over that income threshold. You make over, say, 50,000 and you have no children, you won't get the EIC. Hey, Kentrella, how you doing, sis? So you need to know what your bracket is, where you are, and how taxes work. A lot of people do people tax return, and they don't ever explain to them how to read their tax return or what it is exactly and how they came up with that number. It's the credits minus the liability that gives you your refund amount. It sounds so simple, but it's not simple if you don't understand where those basic numbers come from. Now, I do have some ebooks out. You can definitely scan the barcode and download your copies today. This one I just created like a week ago on how to start a used car dealership in any city and state. A list on if you're interested in stocks, learning about the stock market. There's some stocks in here you can use to start off with. Tax-free living, kind of about what we talked about today, how to strategize and pay less in taxes. And this right here is the blueprint on how to start your own $1 million business. So you can scan this barcode, screenshot it, scan it later, take a picture, and you'll be able to access these ebooks right there from my website. Then, like I said, if you have any questions or you want to schedule a consultation, definitely reach out and let me know. So that is pretty much the gist. That's the end of my live today. Once again, my name is Kayla Joshua, and definitely here to assist you in any way, shape, or form when it comes to finances, because as a community, we definitely need to grow. We need to grow together and start asking questions so that way we're not ashamed of, we're not ashamed to not know, because everyone doesn't know everything. Also, too, like I said, I see my sis Cantrell in here. She has a business where she teaches people how to start their own home healthcare business. So we have to connect. We have to network. Our net worth is our network. If you have any questions, like I said, by all means, definitely let us know. Cantrell, if you're still on here, you could drop your information in the comment section as well. And if you're watching this later on, just hashtag replay or inbox me or go to my website, joinkayla.com, and you'll be able to schedule that consultation. Well, thank you guys, and you do have a good night.